and I want to get your mind ready, because we're going to be talking about your mind. How would you feel if your spouse could read your mind? That wasn't even in my notes, but it sounded good. God can. Keep that in mind. We're going to be talking about them negative thoughts that we have and how we can deal with them. That's the direction we're going. We've got a great little young barrel racer here, and Carly Matan, and she's going to talk to us about her horse and some things, some exercises she can do. But we've got a couple of announcements to make. There is no men's meeting tomorrow night. There's no women's meeting tomorrow night. And the children's church is from 2 years old through 6th grade. And when we start talking about our mind, it's easy to say, love God with all your mind. We've always heard that verse, the greatest commandments, love God with all your heart, all your mind, all your strength, all your soul. And what it's talking about is with everything you got. It ain't this one. It's with everything you got. But I think we've misunderstood and just kind of pushed it to the side. Love God with your mind. We say it, but do we mean it? Do you love God with your thinking that comes through your mind? Do you love God with the thoughts that come through your mind? Now, I know you can't control all your thoughts, but we are going to learn to redirect them today. But right now, we're going to talk to Carly, and she's going to tell us what she's got going on with her horse and how we might can help you. Go ahead, girl.
Okay, so I don't know if it was like 2 weekends ago.
It was longer than that. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And I was at a barrel race, and I couldn't find the timers, and I wasn't going to stop before the timers. So I went as fast as I could, and then I only had like maybe 20 feet to stop, and slid right into the fence, and Renegade fell on my leg. But that's pretty much what happened.
For you non-barrel racing people, let me illustrate this. You know there's 3 barrels that they go run around, and we're going to say that she's going to come in that gate and come out that gate. Well, there's electric timers, and so many people start slowing down before the timers. Well, she's not going to do that. She might run into the fence, but she's not going to slow down. So that's what happened. When she was looking for the timer, all at once, she's too close, and he banged his head, chest, whatever, down they went. You're not the first one to do that, honey, just let me tell you. But we are glad you're okay. You know, I had a whole different plan for you today until I talked to you this morning. But they want to use this horse for different events. And I'm telling you, that's pretty hard. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible, but some things is harder for them to understand. Like, you know, if she falls off, she wants her horse to stop. I'm like, I'm not so sure I want that, because I've had them stop and stand all over top of me. Just go ahead and get out of my way is my thinking. But then in the goat tying, you want them to keep running while you bail out. I mean, they bail out running wide open. It's just, they're pretty amazing. But when I was thinking about it, I actually watched some of your videos last night. And I'll tell you what I noticed. It's more important than the stopping. You're really getting way out here with your hand, and I want your mom and daddy and the camera to see this. Give me some slack. When you get out here, it's pinching up here. And the head's going up, and it's actually costing you time. You know, you're trying to get it to turn, but it's costing you time about that. One of the things that I've learned through barrel racing years ago, one of the things that Jack Henning taught me, a good stop is just a fast slow down. So I want to do some exercises with you. Actually, before, I want you to tell us what exercises do you do at home? How do you practice at home away from the arena?
So my main thing is lawn trotting.
Is what?
lawn trotting.
Okay, that's good. Excellent. That was going to be one of my ideas.
And another one is I'm trying to make him spin on his hind end more than, because he likes to be on his front end a lot.
Okay.
So I'm trying to teach him to be on his hind end. And so
Okay, how are you doing that?
I'm just kind of like lifting my rein and just.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to give you a tip for that that's going to help with that. The better they back up, practice back up, practice back up, practice back up, because that gets them, that automatically gets them there. And what you want to do is practice backing up as light as you can. That's the key. You know, how little can I do and you back up? Now, in the beginning, when you're practicing this, what you need to do, if you think about it, because this horse, and I'm not going to say just this horse, I'm going to guess this horse is better trained than a lot of them, just because I know your family. But so many, they are geared to go. I mean, that's when you're barrel racing, and the difference between winning and losing is a couple hundredths of seconds. Not seconds, a few hundreds of seconds. So everything is go, 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 go. But something I learned in rodeoing is the ones that, I mean, every once in a while, somebody's just gifted and somebody's got a gifted horse. But the people who can do it year after year after year, Sue Watts has been winning money for about 60 years. And she raises her own horses. You know, I don't know how many different horses she's won money on. But what that says is she practices the things that are not fun. That's what makes a difference between a great person, great at anything. I don't care if it's walking your walk with the Lord or running barrels, whatever it is. When you practice the things that are not fun, you have an advantage over those who don't in the long run. So when you practice that, the long trotting is great. You know, that's helping him strengthen his muscles, helps him run faster. I'm reminded of another story that a young lady, her parents had a lot of money, and they bought her a high dollar horse that would win. You just sit on him and he'd win. But it don't take but about 6 months and he don't win no more because they do things wrong. So what they would do when it got time for a rodeo, they would send the horse to Jack Henning for 2 days. Never ran barrels on him. They just got him to be light in the face and obedient. Just do something else. I laughed. Linda Jones, when she'd get mad at her barrel horse, she would say, okay, you start riding him in the woods. Get his mind off the barrels. Do something different. But one of the things that I'm going to get Tegan to help me today, because I know come on in, Tegan. I know she can coach it better than I can. I did it, but I never coached it. And that's about transitions, about getting them to slow down and speed up from different gaits and in the same gaits, and that is going to help him work off his butt. Now, it's not something that's fun to practice. You know, how long you been running barrels on him?
3 years.
Does he know the pattern? Okay, well then you don't have to do the pattern. He knows the pattern. What you do is work on his headset, his rear end, and his ribs. You know, I knew a barrel racer that was really good. Most of the time she rode every day, it was in a circle about this size. And everything was about get off my leg and come in, get off my leg and go out, slow down, speed up. Give me control without an argument. See, that's what I saw in the video. When you pull out wide, he's like this a little bit. But the more you get him on his butt, the better that's going to happen. So, Tegan, you got any comments? Do we work on the backup first or the transition? Transition to help the backup.
I would do transitions first.
Yeah, I would too. So, give me the microphone in case you say something bad. And I'm going to turn it over to Tegan a little bit because I am a believer in this transition thing because he already knows the pattern. Now it's about getting him to listen to you. So I'm going to step out, and Tegan, you help her.
Carly, go ahead and just walk him around the outside of the ring. So for the way that I train, you don't you use a lot of your body in your seat for transitions. Our hands in their face, they're controlling their head. Their head's about 10% of their body. So why am I working on controlling 10% when I've got another 90% that I'm sitting on? And that other 90% is what's doing the work. We have to get to their mind so that we can communicate to the body, but the body's what we really want to talk to. So Carly, just go ahead and ask him to stop. All right, so that wasn't bad. She was able to use her body. I'd like to see a little less with the hand, but what I really liked there is she used her body before she went to the hand. The hand was the backup to the body. So go ahead and walk off again.
During all this, remember, our whole sermon today is about our mind. And that's what we're looking for in this horse is his mind.
And then go ahead and ask him to stop. So you notice, guys, how she actually sat back a little bit. She leaned back a little. She sat down on her seat bones. She kicked her feet a little bit forward. And then when he didn't respond well enough, then she went to her hands. That's awesome. Go ahead and walk off. In your training, do you ever speed up and slow down in your gaits? Like speed the walk up, slow the walk down, speed the trot up, slow the trot down? Okay. So let's see an example of that. See how slow you can get him to walk without using your hands. So what you guys aren't hearing is she's having to talk to him. He doesn't really understand walk slowly with her body. She's having to use her words and she's using her hands a little bit more than I'd like for just the walk. Because if you're having to use your hands this much at the walk, when you're going wide open, you don't have anything else to go to. So if we can get him listening to her body a little bit more at the slower speeds, the hands will have more impact at the higher speeds. So that would be something I would definitely work on. You may even go back to, when you're doing your slow work, go back and put him in a snaffle where your hands don't mean as much, so that it's really going to tell you, am I doing this right or not? Because, I mean, we all have to have a way to check ourselves and see if we're doing it right ourselves too.
I like that idea.
And then if you ride him in a snaffle more often, this bit will also mean more with brakes when you need it. Okay? So let's try that. Let's go ahead to a faster walk.
A quick trail ride story or cowboy story. If you want your horse to walk faster, teach them to walk slower and then give them a cue to speed up. So then anytime, if you teach that, anytime you want them to go faster, you just give them that cue and they will walk faster. But if you don't have a cue, all you know is to kick, they're not understanding it as well as if you teach them to walk slow. There was times I taught mine to walk slow because in the cowboy world, the first person to the gate had to open it.
So another thing I'm noticing is you're having to use your hands a lot to guide him. I would really, really concentrate on teaching yourself and him to work off of your seat and leg to guide. So what I'm saying is he's naturally, horses want to cut their turns off. He's wanting to come closer to me in this circle, and she's having to keep him out on the rail. That's pretty normal. Most horses are going to want to come to the person standing on the ground. But instead of having to use her hands to keep him on the rail, it would be great if she could use her legs and her seat aids to make a wall to say, this is where I need you to be. What that will help with is the hands will have more impact when they actually need to really say something. So if she's always using her hands to say, stay here, don't turn yet, stay here, then when her hands need to say something else, it may not mean as much because the hands have always been talking and he's kind of starting to ignore the hands. So what I would say there is really work on, and again, you could go back to your snaffle, but really work on, can he turn just off your leg and seat? Or is he going to take your leg and think I'm supposed to go? And I'm seeing the grin on her face. He's going to want to go. So that would be one thing, and that will help you with your barrels too, because when he wants to get too close to a barrel, if he listens to her leg aids, she can put that leg on and say, move off the barrel a little bit. Or if he's getting too wide around the barrel, she can put the outside leg on and say, Bud, I need you to make this turn a bit tighter. That's going to help tremendously if you take the time, go back and really teach yourself and him how to steer off leg. Then your hands will mean more when they actually need to do some talking. So let's try going up to that long trot that you do with him. And then I would say, can you go down to a slow sitting trot without using your hands? So you did have to use your hands. And so what you guys didn't hear is she did say whoa. Make sure that whoa has a meaning. Does whoa mean stop dead, or does whoa mean slow down? Make sure you know what you want the word to mean before you tell it to him, so that you know if he's done it correctly. When we're asking our horses something, if we don't know the answer we're looking for, how do we know if they did it right? And then how do we know if we should reward or correct? So you have to make sure you know exactly your expectation of your cue before you even cue it, or you don't know if the horse has done it the right way or not. So go back up to that long trot. I'm going to challenge you. We're in a round pen. You can't go too far. Put your reins on the neck and don't use your hands. Now, without your words, yeah, I know. This is also very challenging for a rider, because as humans, we use our hands for a lot of stuff. So our hands are a bit of a safety net. Without using your words, can you bring him to the trot? Yep, that's okay. All right, go ahead and pick him back up and bring him down to the trot. So what that tells me is that he has no concept of what her body is saying, which means if she doesn't have reins, she's got nothing. That's not very good. So what I would really focus on, see if you can come down to a sitting trot. Nice and slow as you can get without walking. That's another challenge. Trying to get them to trot super slow is very difficult for the horse, so they have to be incredibly strong to do it. Most people don't realize that. To trot slowly, they have to be very strong. And you'll notice she's struggling with keeping that slow trot. He wants to walk or go a little bit faster. So these are some of the things, you can go ahead and walk. These are some of the things I would really, really focus on, is get him listening more to your body. Make sure you're incredibly aware of what your body is asking. So if she leans back today and it means slow down, and then she leans back tomorrow and it means speed up, there's no reason for him to ever listen. You know, I'm sure Skipper has something he wants to say.
I have a question, barrel racing question. If your horse is getting too close to the barrel, do you rein him away from it, or do you push him out with your leg? Well, let me rephrase that. If he's too close to the barrel, do you pull his nose away from it or his nose to it if he's too close? Okay, I like that. I mean, I've seen 1,000 barrel racers, if they're too close, they rein their nose to the left and it pushes their body to the right. You know, just the opposite of what you want.
And that's, Carly, what I would say with that is I would encourage, as you're doing that, use your leg to teach him to move off your leg so that your hand doesn't have to be so extreme.
Exactly.
And that's going to be the biggest thing. So you guys noticed she had her hands way out here to get his nose this way and his shoulder that way. Well, now if she needs to communicate to his face, so she's using her hands to communicate to his body. If she needs to communicate to his face, now she's got nothing because she's doing everything she can on his face. So there's no more communication left. So if you can, so this is a bit nicer. She's not talking to his face quite as much, and she's using her leg. Now, he doesn't understand it as well. He does understand it. I can see that he's putting an effort in, but he doesn't understand it quite as well, just because it's not the consistent routine. So that's something to work on. And the better he gets off your leg like that, the less you're going to have to be moving with your hands. One thing, my first trainer, but I've also had a number of really good trainers say this, the key to a speed event is going slow. Yes, you heard me right. The key to a speed event is going slow. Slow is smooth. When you can do it smoothly at a slow speed, then you speed it up. Slow is smooth. The smoother you go, the faster you will be. So if you can get all of this stuff down at the walk, and then a slow trot, and then a fast trot, then a slow canter, you can start gradually building it up to where you can be smooth as silk. And as you smooth everything out, everything will get faster. It takes a lot of time and a lot of patience.
What just fell out of her pocket? It's over by the flag. Might be a $100 bill.
Church flyer.
I can remember about 50 years ago, Linda Jones had a road back in the pasture where she trotted him as fast as he would go in a standing trot. I mean, she stood up over his front end, and I mean, they could go fast. And then she'd bring him back down, building muscles.
Yep,
But like you say, going super slow builds muscles too.
it does.
And another thing that people make a mistake in, and I think team ropers are probably the worst at it, is they always warm their horse up in the left lead, because when you team rope, you got to go in the left lead. Well, if you do 90% of your riding going left, you only strengthen the muscles on one side of your horse.
Yep.
One side's weak and one side's not. So you got to keep a balance. Although they're either right leaded or left leaded, you got to balance out their training to keep their muscles equal.
Yep. You're only as strong as your weakest link. So it doesn't matter which direction your horse goes better. You're only as strong as the weakest link, and at some point you're going to have to go the other direction. So you try to get them as balanced as possible, and then you play to your strengths in competition, but build your weaknesses in practice.
One of the things that we've learned is to try to paint a picture of the future that's so good, you'll do the hard work to get there. And if you want him working better off his butt, this is the things you do. Mm-hmm. You do this, and so you're in his face less. So when you get in his face a little bit, it means something, and it gets him so much better. You go from do this well, and then start backing up more, and it just gets them that butt up under them better.
Yep. And I was talking to Skipper a little earlier. This goes into less about the training and more into the biomechanics, so it gets a little more technical. But the way that a horse is built, if you want them to sit on their butt, it sounds weird, but you really don't want their head sky high in the air. It makes it so that their back is arched the wrong direction. You want their back to be like a suspension bridge. And if you've got the suspension bridge, the butt is down. And there's a little more complication to it when you want them really lifting the front end. But the basic generality of it is when you have the head way up, they're arched the wrong way. The butt's also up. They can't sit and stop. They can't sit and turn. They can't sit and back up. So you need them arched up like a suspension bridge so that they can actually sit and use their butt. Getting that is the complicated part.
Help me with the sermon here. We're talking about our mind. Tell me about this horse's mind and how he's understanding all of this.
At the moment, he doesn't really seem to know much more than go.
He's a barrel racing horse.
He's a barrel racing horse. He knows his job. He knows how to turn the barrels. He's obviously good at it. He's talented. He's athletic. But he doesn't understand the basics of just be soft, be quiet, be relaxed. He's happy enough in here, but I can guarantee she picks the reins up and asks for something, he's going to get a little bit more tense. I would say, how many of you actually listen to reason when you're tense? I know I don't. I don't know many people who do. Tense, anxious, scared, fearful, whatever. So if you can convince this horse to go back to the slow work and relax and really understand the cues, you'll have a much better time in the heat of competition because he'll have those cues down. But you can't teach it when he's tense. So you have to find a place mentally for him to be relaxed to teach it. And I can use some of my examples of my own life this week of when I'm super, super anxious, I have a really hard time listening to God. I listen a lot better when I'm relaxed. So we can, use that for ourselves too.
I like your way better, but I'm way too impatient. I found for my horses, of course, I did things totally different. And I'm not going to say that my way was right, but it worked for me in team roping. I laugh because I've got really long arms, and we're going to pretend like I'm sitting on a saddle. If that's the saddle horn, when you rope, you have to wrap the rope around the saddle horns. This hand's got to be out of the way. And what 90% of team ropers do, they move the hand to dally. Well, they just duck their horse off. So I had long arms, so my bridle reins was way up there. My bridle reins, you're going to laugh at this. Now, this was a long time ago. But they didn't move but about that far to mean reverse or run wide open. But it was like power steering and power brakes on a car.
Absolutely.
I mean, there was no pulling, there was no head up in the air. It was just run, slow down, that speed, whatever I wanted, and the rest of it was legs.
Absolutely. And I ride the same way. One thing in training people I find is most people ride with reins that are too long. And you think if I ride with a shorter rein, I'm going to be pulling on my horse's face. Well, you might if you don't learn how to ride with it. But if you learn how to ride correctly with the shorter rein, it's like Skipper said, you've got such a better communication that you don't have to do as much. But you also have to learn how to ride with your body. And these horses can feel a fly land on a single hair. They can feel when you shift a seat bone left or right. They can feel when your calf muscle tenses up. They can feel when you're thinking about asking for something, because when you think about it, you shift a muscle that you didn't even realize you shifted. These horses feel all that. We teach them to ignore it. But the good riders that you see out there where you don't see the rider doing anything, it's because they're doing all of that. And it's so subtle that you don't see it. And that's for me personally, that's a goal that I have, is I don't want anybody to see what I'm doing. I want my horse to be so in tune to me, but I have to be in tune to myself and to them as well, so that I can put that into practice.
While you're doing all of this, and like I say, I totally agree with working with a different bit than what you run with, but at some point, that this horse has got to take some pressure on his mouth and give to it in the correct direction.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about that too. And I'm one of those. If the horse needs it. Now, if they don't need it, I don't do it. But if they ain't, and they ain't. Well, they ain't. Where am I from? If they're not listening to me very, very well, I'm picking on them, asking them questions all the time. A good example, years ago, probably 14 years ago, when we were doing Cowboy-Up Ministry in Zoffa, we did this big trail ride. And I hate trail rides. And I would get in the front, and I'd have a friend in the back, and we had our telephones, and I'd tell him what gates to open. We were in a working cow ranch, going from pasture to pasture. And we rode for about 2.5 hours, and the guy that rode beside me talked the whole time. And when he got back, he said, I just don't have any time to train my horse because I like to go trail riding. And I looked at him and I said, I just trained mine for 2.5 hours. What were you doing? Because normally, most of the places we went was on a trail that we drove the trucks from pasture to pasture. And I could just gently take my leg and move him over to this side of the trail, or move him to this side of the trail, or I could wiggle my fingers and his head would come down. I was training the whole time. And that's what I'm saying. When you just ride, make it count for something.
Absolutely.
Getting his nose light or getting his body to listen to your legs at a walk at any speed. I like it. And I love the figure eights because I can do so much of that right there in one little spot. You're teaching them to bend. And the thing about it is you can do it at a walk or a trot. You can teach them to tuck that nose to the inside and not fight you. That's going to make difference in your time, is when that head don't go up.
Mm-hmm. And I would go back, Carly, to you, and this goes back to the whole suspension bridge effect. When you ask him to slow down, you've got the right thought process in mind of leaning backwards, but when you lean behind what we call the vertical, so if your body is standing straight up vertical and you lean behind the vertical, what that does is that actually shoves your seat bones down into his back. I don't know about you, but somebody sticks a bunch of seat bones down in my back, I'm not a suspension bridge anymore, I'm falling apart. So instead of leaning back, what I would encourage you to do is lift your rib cage. Think come up instead of back. That will help lift him up underneath himself and give him better balance to be able to stop. Now, is he going to know to do that the moment that you do that? No, he's not. You're going to have to teach it to him. But he already doesn't totally understand the body cues that you're using, so it'll be easier. It'll be hard for you to make that a habit for yourself, but it will benefit both of you and your future riding career in the long run, because it'll help him find his balance a little bit better, and you won't be moving quite as much either.
I was told move your pelvis more than your shoulders.
Yes.
You know, you sit back on your back pockets. You curl your pelvis more than you move your shoulders.
A great example of that, if any of you guys have ever watched dressage horses, which I'm sure probably most of you have not, but in the dressage world, they have this super slow, prancy trot where the legs just kind of come up like this, and then they come up and they literally pause in a suspended state. I had the privilege of riding a dressage horse that actually was trained to do that. And I'm not a dressage rider. I know enough to get by with it. I was out there trotting the horse around with the trainer, and I'm thinking I'm asking the horse to go forward, not realizing that I'm shifting my body in a way, and all of a sudden he goes into that trot. And I mean, it was super cool feeling, like amazing feeling. And I looked at her and I was like, what did I just do? Because that's not what I was asking for. She told me I had rolled my pelvis from here to here. Did you guys see my hand move? Like a quarter of an inch. Just rolling the pelvis a little bit changed how that horse went. That's an example of how much they can feel us. If we in tune ourselves to what we're asking for and then we train them to that, we can sit up there and have glorious rides by doing very little. And it's awesome, but it takes a lot of time and a lot of practice, and goes back to what Skipper's talking about, the slow, boring stuff. But it pays off.
Are you working on anything while you go around? Or are you just riding around in circles? You're moving, using your legs to keep him on the fence? Okay.
Well, good for you, truly. Because as Skipper said, if we're just sitting up there wandering around, we're not training anything. I mean, yes, he's getting in better shape, which is great for competition, but it doesn't help. Doesn't matter how good a shape he's in if you can't control the energy that he's got.
Well, it's not connected to his mind.
Yeah.
You know, you want to be able to make this circle smaller, make the circle bigger.
Can you, without your hands, can you change directions with a turn on the haunches?
Like, I can't do that.
Do you know how to ask for it? Okay, let me go back a step further. Do you know what a turn on the haunches is? It's your spin. It's your spin. So what I'm asking her to do is, while he's walking, instead of just turning a circle, I'm asking her to, as he walks, make the back feet pause, bring the front feet around, and then go the other way. So that's a spin. And she just said she didn't know how to ask for it. Well, if you don't know how to ask for it, how are you going to teach it? And that's not your fault. If you don't know, you don't know. You have to be taught. But if you don't know how to ask for it, you can't expect him to do it. So let's go ahead and go back to our walk. You don't ever really want to start this at a stop, because anytime you ask a horse to move their feet sideways, you're asking them to use energy that they don't totally want to use, so they're more likely to slow down and do what we call get stuck. And yes, we'd like him to have a good backup, but we don't want him backing up for these maneuvers. We want him thinking forward so that his back end is stepping under and sitting while we're pushing forward. So what I'm going to have you do, we're just going to use open door, closed door scenario. So we're going to want to turn to the left. You're going to open your left leg, open your left rein, close your right rein and close your right leg, and sit on your left seat bone. So what we're asking him to do is move under the seat bone that she's putting weight on. Good, and then walk out of it. And so when we start this, and I skipped this, I should have told you that first. When we start this, we only want one good step. So she was thinking I had told her to turn around, so she went to turn around completely, that's my bad. We want one good step, and you had one really nice step, and then we got greedy and said, but I wanted a full turnaround, and he kind of walked out of the good that he was giving us. So try that again and just get one good step, and then let him walk out of it. Good, walk out of it. Very nice. So that's going to be the start of you teaching him a spin, okay?
And the purpose of the spin is to get him to using his rear end.
Yep. And that's what I would encourage you to do is as you guys go through this, use your seat cue and your leg cue before you go to your hand cue. You're going to have to use your hand cue because he doesn't understand the legs and seat yet, but use the seat and leg cue first so that as he learns this, he'll learn it just off the seat and leg cue. And the hand cue is just going to be a reinforcement instead of the actual question. And that will also get him started with learning to move off of her seat and legs, which will help in the barrels as well.
Question, can you just sit still and flexing? Okay. That was actually better than I expected because, but it shows that's something that's been taught to him. No doubt about it. But I see so many things, even at a walk and trot, when you go to turn him, his nose goes the wrong way. Mm-hmm. And that's a time thing. That's what's going to lower your time. If you can't do it at a walk, you're never going to do it at a run. So that is something that really benefits you is this. Like I said, being a winner is doing the things that's not fun. Learning how to get that perfect at a walk and a trot. Of course, Jack Henning said, I never could get a horse to think very much walking. He did a lot of his training at a trot because he said it engages him a little more. But he was a professional trainer too.
Well, and I'll even go as far to say is I've got one horse specifically that me and the client both want this horse really listening off the seat. And I will probably, in my 1 hour ride, I probably walk for about 40 minutes. And a lot of what I work on is some of what we just worked on here is like, I need you to have a working walk. This mare likes to just walk along nice and easy, super smooth. You're still going to get places, but I need her to strengthen her rear end. We need to have some work going. But then when I ask her to do what I just asked Carly to do with the turn on the haunches, we can't just be at this forward walk. She's got to pause and sit back on her butt. And so we'll work for 10 minutes on just doing some 90-degree turns, and she's at a place now where I'm working on how much can I do it with just my body and seat instead of using my reins. Because this mare is going to be a jumping horse, so at some point I'm going to need my reins for other things. She needs to listen to my body for slowing down, speeding up, turning, going to the jumps. I'm going to need my reins to help with different things. And if I'm always in my hand, and she's used to my hand being connected to her face just to slow down and steer, I can't use it for the other stuff that I'm going to need it for. And so that's something I would really work on is take that time between practices or between competitions, get yourself comfortable with it. 'Cause that's another thing. If you're not used to riding using your seat and legs, you're not comfortable with it. It's scary. It's weird. It's awkward. Get yourself comfortable with it. Really check yourself. Make sure when you ask him a question, you're doing it through your body correctly before you correct him. And then just practice that.
Before we run out of time, I just want to see some figure eights. I am like a huge believer in these things because I feel like I can teach a horse so much. And all it is a figure eight. But what you want to think is you're getting your horse to bend with his head calm. Bend with his head calm.
And Carly, as you're doing this, without your hands, with your good bend, push him about 4 feet away from that cone with your inside leg.
There you go.
That was good. Now bring him about a foot from this cone.
What people get caught up doing is the same thing over and over and over and over again, rather than be wide on that one, be close on this one, be this on this one. Have that communication with his brain all the time.
Stay going left around this cone without using your hands. Pick a cone and just do a left circle. I don't care which cone, just pick a cone and stay on that cone. Put that cone in the middle of your circle. Now without using your hands, just your inside leg, make your circle bigger. Good. Now for the tougher one, keeping your bend and without using your hands, make your circle smaller. So these are some of the things that, and it's kind of showing some of the holes, and she's doing a great job with it. I'm really putting her on the spot. So there she made the circle smaller, but we lost the bend. So make the circle bigger. This is the easier part because horses naturally want to make their turns wider. And then again, holding the bend, make your circle smaller. Good. And then just go for a walk again, relax it a little bit. And I wouldn't, you don't want to just pound these exercises. Do it for 3 to 5 minutes and then go do something else for a moment. And then come back to it if you think you need to work on it more.
A key word for this, if you want to tell her to go practice something, is a wagon wheel. That's what Chris Cox calls it. It's what I learned at one of his clinics. And you make that circle whatever size you want it. But then you add speed to it. You go to trotting fast and doing all of these bends with a good headset. I mean, I'm a believer. This head's going to win you more money. And because all of this is gearing back towards a communication that's lighter in the face, that'll make them better in the face and use their rear end more. But use some imagination on what you're doing.
And then just like we started today, just remember, if it's not like 100% foolproof at a slow speed, so at the walk, don't try to trot it. Keep it slow until you guys both have it, because if she's having to think about her cues and then she speeds it up, she's not going to have as much time to think. So you have to get this ingrained in yourself and then get it ingrained in your horse and then test it with speed. And by testing it with speed, that means just very, very gradually speeding it up. And you're going to run into spots where you go up a speed and you have to come back down and retune it back up a little bit.
Do you recommend doing these slow exercises in a snaffle bit?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be big to you.
Everything in a snaffle bit.
All of this is snaffle bit.
Yeah, everything in a snaffle.
You want just like a O-ring or just regular tom-tom?
Anything that does not have leverage. So no, not a tom-thumb.
Not a tom-thumb.
Yeah, more like an O-ring. You want something that does not have leverage.
I don't know why, but I've just never been comfortable with an O-ring. I like a D-ring. I mean, that's just me. That's what mine are. But that's going to help this horse get out of his face a little bit to find out what you really want. And that's kind of our deal with God. We got to find out, what does God really want? We're doing all these things for God, but we're doing them with the wrong purpose or the wrong attitude or the wrong mindset. So you got about 3 minutes. What's your closing arguments here?
We've pretty much gone over a lot of stuff for a lot of what I would call homework. The biggest thing that I'm seeing at the moment, she's doing a great job using her legs and really working on getting him off of them. He is showing that he doesn't totally understand what it means, because every time she really tries to change the leg, he speeds up. So that's going to be just like we talked about earlier, is he needs to learn that leg does not just mean go. Leg means lots of different things. And working on your body position as you ask for these things will help. Like I notice you're kind of sitting to the inside of your circles, which is great. That helps her not fly off when he does a turn. Working on using that sitting to the inside as more of a cue than the leg will help him. If he learns that, then your legs can do a little bit more. And then don't get greedy here. So he gave you a couple really good steps and you're kind of yelling at him for not doing enough. Give him a break. There you go. So ask for 2 good steps and then give him a reward so that he knows that was the good thing.
Then you can go back and just let them walk.
Yeah.
Just relax their mind. See, you're asking question, ask a question. When they do it right, just let them go and not think.
Yeah.
That's their reward. When you leave them alone, that's their reward, whether it's just walk out or stand still.
And it's so easy for us to do that. We think, oh, he did one or two steps. He understands. Well, he understood, not because he understood, but he guessed the right answer. And then you ask for 3 or 4 more steps, and he's like, well, that didn't work. Maybe I should try something else to get
Yeah.
rid of that nagging pressure that's on me. So you have to do exactly what Skipper just said. You get 1 or 2 good steps, and then just relax everything and let the horse be wherever they want to be. And you can do that for 3 or 4 steps, 10 or 12, depending on the horse and what you're teaching, and then go back to the question. Get the 1 or 2 good and go back to relaxing.
But doing these simple little transitions and leg yields with a snaffle bit is going to change what you wanted in the long run of getting him to use his rear end more.
Yep.
This is all building on that. Because the less you use your hands now, the more it'll mean when you do use your hands, especially when you're practicing with a snaffle bit.
Well, and the snaffle will really show you where you might have some holes. So he's used to this bit. This is actually a pretty strong bit. So you go back down to a snaffle, you're like going from a steak knife cutting through
Yeah.
a fillet to a butter knife cutting through
Yeah.
a piece of
Yeah.
grit. So it'll show you where you have holes that you need to fill back in too. And then when you transfer back into this bit, you'll have such a better time.
I'm just learning from you too. Probably what I would have done in the beginning
Alan's calling us.
is just go up here and snap this into there. Then when you snap in up here, you've taken all that leverage out. I liked my bits that I used a lot that had some type of a ring here. So when I was doing a lot of my training, I could go up here. Could you see what I did? I snapped it up there. That one doesn't unclip. Larry, what kind of daddy are you? Give your daughter... These snaps are older than I am. You had them when you was a kid. Thank you very much, and I'm promising you, you ride with a snaffle bit and do these things, you'll have faster times. I mean, I've seen it all my life. The horses that are calmer and don't fight your hand will win you more money than those that are got their head up. You know, they might be running faster, but it's not a controlled run. It's just, of course, they say, you know, barrel racing horses are just a controlled runaway. The only thing worse than a barrel racing horse was a bulldogging horse. But I want to give you a little message about how you can relay all of this back to your mind. And I want to share a few thoughts. And I want you to understand that when we're born, we come with a clean slate. We don't know good or bad. All we know is you do for me. A baby's 100% dependent on a parent. You clean me, you feed me. You pick me up when I cry. If you do that every time, you'll be holding them all the time. Man, we come with a clean slate. So what we do with that, how we're raised, is right in the book of our life. And I don't know a lot of people that had really great parents. If you can say that, you need to be an angel. Because so many of us did not have great parents, whether it was spiritually or emotionally. You know, so many of us were taught, you know, you're not enough. You know, and we're going to talk about that just a little bit later. But one of the things we have to understand, what causes us to have negative thinking? And we're going to have thinking. Thoughts are going to come. We're going to talk about that. And now, in fact, I'll talk about it now. Where do thoughts come from? And I've said this for years, and I've asked a group of preachers their idea, and none of them argues with me, so I'm guessing it's pretty accurate. Where do our thoughts come from? I believe that our thoughts can come up, and you know, they can just pop up. You don't have to say, oh, I want this thought of. No, they just pop up. Anything that we heard, seen, read, or done in our lifetime. Anything that we put into our brain can come back as a thought. That's why you need to be very careful what you put into your brain. Because too many of us have fed our brain trash. We fed our brain pure, satanic, evil stuff. We fed it. But here what happens, thoughts can come from God and thoughts can come from Satan. You have to know where your thoughts are coming from in order to learn how to start controlling them some. But any kind of abuse as a child, whether it's physical, emotional, sexual, any kind of abuse you had as a child will make you have a low self-esteem because you grew up never being good enough. My name is Skipper, and I was never good enough. The little things we say that hurt and cut to a knife. Oh, we found you under a rock. You're never going to be nothing but a blank, dumb cowboy. Those things come back and haunt you if you don't learn to control your mind. So what happens if you've had that low self-esteem because you're never going to be good enough because they told you through their actions maybe not with words, but with their actions. You have this low self-esteem. Well, guess what that creates? A workaholic. Somebody that's going to do it perfect so you can find nothing wrong with them because they cannot stand to be criticized. That was me. Either I was going to be perfect or I wasn't going to do it at all. I would rather be in trouble for not doing it than be told I did it wrong because of my self-esteem. So a low self-esteem, it comes out in a lot of different colors. Workaholics, and I've actually said over the top anything. You show me somebody that's just over the top funny, cracking jokes all the time. Chances are they're covering something. Alcoholics, drug addicts, they're all trying to medicate a pain that's on the inside. Smoking cigarettes. I've never smoked. That's a whole nother story. But when I learned that cigarettes is an emotional painkiller, I had a different viewpoint. When I see somebody, asking for money on the side of the road and they're smoking, I don't say, well, he's just going to go buy cigarettes. Yeah, I don't. Believe me, I've wanted a lot of pain pills in the last 7 weeks. And if that's their emotional pain pill, I'll buy them a cigarette. But you see, it's about learning how to make us whole rather than keep living in the lies that we've lived in. So all of these things can lead to overachievers trying to be perfect so nobody will find fault with them. A quote that I saw on Facebook just a day or so ago of this big ship in the ocean says a ship never sinks from the water around it. It sinks from the water that gets in it. And that's what we're doing when we're talking about this series of the road to victory from our house to the White House. That's the series we're on, and this just happens to be part of controlling our mind. Is the other thing we've been dealing and talking with is we're in two worlds. We're in a physical world that we see, hear, and do, and we're in a spiritual world that Christ is king of. The Bible is clear. God is the ruler of this world. I said that wrong. Satan is the ruler of earth. You can look it up. But Jesus is the king of the spiritual world. So which world are you in will determine how you respond to some of this stuff. Now, I did this, I think 5 years ago. I just got one of those flashes on Facebook that, 5 years ago, this was what was on Facebook. And I wrote the question, what's the most negative thing you've ever said to yourself? Now, most of you people know that I'm setting you up. So when I wrote that a couple of days, only 2 people answered. Anything you say, can, or do, I may use as a sermon, just so you know. But this is what they wrote. And I want to ask you, have you ever felt this? The question was, what is the most negative thing you have ever told yourself? I'm not good enough. I don't deserve blank, blank, blank. I'll never be good enough. Things will be like this forever. I believed that. How many of you ever said, I can't? Or, I don't matter? Maybe God has not forgiven me after all. I'm not worthy. I'm useless and not enough. I'm not good enough to be loved. I'm hopeless. I tell myself I'm a piece of blank. I'm not smart enough. I will never be the daughter my mother wanted me to be. Or maybe it was the daughter your father wanted you to be. I'll never please my dad. I'm lower than dirt. Of course, I used to say I was lower than whale poop. I should have been a better mother by not working so much. I'm fat and out of shape. No one will ever love me. I'm not worthy of God's love. Now, first of all, I want to tell you the difference between guilt and shame. Guilt is when you say, I've done something bad. Shame is when you say, I am bad. That's a big thing. When you say, I am bad, you need counseling because you're taking it all on yourself. I am a bad person. And that's what all of these words, I am, I. You know, it's gone past I made a mistake. And I'm going to learn from it. Versus, I am a bad person and I'm never going to get out of it. I'm stuck right here. So what's the answer? I got an illustration for you real quick. We cannot stop our thoughts. My mind is like a movie projector. My mind cannot be stopped. We're going to say, this is my mind, and it's just pouring. It's coming out. You can't stop it. But people, let me tell you what you can do. You can redirect it. You don't have to keep flowing to the person that you say you are. It comes back to, do we live in the physical world or do we live in a spiritual world? And let me show you where I get that from. What do we do with these negative thoughts? Well, the Bible is clear. In 2 Corinthians 10:5, it says, take captive every thought to the obedience of Christ. Does Christ say you don't matter? Does Christ say you're lower than dirt? See, Christ said none of that stuff. So we have to take these negative thoughts, redirect it, and say, that may be my past, but let me tell you about my future. That might be what Satan says, but let me tell you about what my Lord says. We need to redirect our negative thinking. We need to redirect how we live our lives, how we control our thoughts. Because I'm a believer, if you don't control your thinking, sooner or later you will not control your actions. Because your actions are going to feed off of what you think. You keep thinking that bad stuff, you're going to do that bad stuff. You keep thinking you're shame, you're bad, you're not going to get out of it. You cannot climb out of that pit that I'm bad. But you can learn that no, I'm not bad. I'm a child of God, and I'm going to surrender my life to Him, and He's going to use me, and He's going to pull me up out of this pit and break the chains of bondage. I am a child of God. I have inherited the kingdom of God. Now, if you're not a born-again believer, you can't claim any of that. That's a whole other story. We're going to have baptisms next week. If you've never given your life to God, if you've never been baptized, you need to consider that before you consider anything else. Have I given my life to God? says be born again. I believe we're born again when we give our life to God and He gives His Spirit to us. That's when we're born again. We're born of the Spirit. And that's where the power to change our thinking and our mind comes from. I want to leave you with one more scripture. It's one that we've heard and heard and heard. And, you know, to control our mind, we have to control our thinking and our thoughts. Keep that in mind. You know, we say, oh, I love God with my mind. Whew. Really? Remember, God can read your mind. He knows what you're thinking. And what are we going to do with the thoughts that we have that are not godly? So anyhow, in Romans 8:5, those who live according to the sinful nature have their minds set on what nature desires. Now, let me put that in the words we've been using. The physical world, the natural man. This is all about who I am as a sinner, who I am with a sinful nature since Adam and Eve, or who I am as a child of God. That's all this is talking about. If we have our mind on what the nature desires, for those who live according to the sinful nature have their minds set on what that nature desires. But those who live in accordance with the Spirit have their minds set on what the Spirit desires. Do you see how easy that is? Which world are we going to live in? Are we going to live in the physical world that's run by Satan? Or are we going to live in the spiritual world and believe what he said about us? Everything. People, God meant for this to be simple. He did not mean for salvation to be complicated. He did not mean for life to be complicated. He said, give me your life and I'll give you the Spirit and we can work this out. See things through my eyes instead of yours. To change your thought, you must change your thinking. Satan's going to tell you all those things that I read. Satan is the accuser. But we have a choice. Every problem we run into, we fall into one of two categories, and that's it. Either we believe Satan's lie, or we have not applied God's truth. Because God's truth will set you free. It's that simple. All of this other malarkey is bull. It falls down on these two principles. Either you've believed a lie. And Satan, that's what he does. He's a deceiver. He wants a lie to look like the truth and the truth to look like a lie. But you have to know this word to know what's a lie and what's not a lie. But either we believed a lie or we've not applied God's truth that we already knew. Most of us, we don't need to learn something new about this book. We don't need to learn something new about God. We need to apply what we already know. Love God with all your heart, with all your soul, all your strength, all your mind, including your thoughts and what you're thinking. Is God pleased with what you're putting into your mind? Be careful, because that feeds your soul. Let's pray. Father God, I thank you. I thank you that you made it so easy for us, but yet it's so hard. Because we're so stubborn and strong-willed, we do not want to surrender to you because we don't see the big picture of how good it'll be when we surrender to you and we walk with you. When we just allow your Spirit to work and live in us. Lord, man, it's just so good when we're totally surrendered. When we feed our mind the things of God. We learn to look through spiritual eyes in a corrupt world. We learn to be that ship that The water around us does not affect us because it's not in us. Your word says, be in the world, but not of the world. And that's exactly the picture it's painted. Lord, so thank you. Thank you for what you've already done for us. And thank you for what you're going to do with us. And we ask it all in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Carly. Thank you, Tegan. See y'all later.